Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty universal and often really, really tough, managing family relationships.
Yeah.
Loving the people in your life who can also be, frankly, the most difficult.
Absolutely. It's that dynamic that just, as the source material puts it, hits different. Family, they have this unique access, this emotional weight that strangers or even good friends just don't.
Yeah, they're the constants, right?
Yeah.
And somehow that permanence seems to translate into this feeling, almost this entitlement to weigh in on, well, everything.
Everything, your job, your partner, whether you bought a house, why you haven't bought a house, how you raise your kids, what you eat. It's endless.
And they can be so blunt about it. Persistent, too.
And often, they genuinely think they're helping, showing they care. But that line between caring and controlling, it gets blurry really fast with family. Their opinion just carries so much more weight because of that deep connection.
So that's our mission today. We want to give you a framework, some real tools to navigate all this without getting completely, swept away by the emotion. We're doing a deep dive into a really powerful approach. It's sort of a two-parter. First, this behavioral strategy called the let them theory.
Right. And second, the mindset tool that makes it actually work, which is understanding the frame of reference.
Exactly. And the core idea here, the big shift, isn't about trying to change your difficult aunt or your critical dad. Forget that.
Yeah, that's usually a losing battle anyway. The real power comes from understanding the system they're operating in, this family system, and then crucially focusing on how you respond, how you show up in the middle of it all.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's unpack that system. What is this family system?
Right, so why do they feel so entitled? Why does Aunt Karen care so much about your career path? Or why does your dad think he gets a vote on your finances?
It's more than just personality quirks, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's systemic. We need to look at the deep roots here. They feel entitled because, well, in their view, they've earned it. They've known you the longest, right? Since you were a baby. They changed your diapers, they saw you through scraped knees, and maybe first heartbreaks.
They feel like they have seniority.
Kind of, yeah. And they believe they know what's best. But here's the kicker. Best almost always means what feels most comfortable and familiar and safe for them, and for the family unit as a whole.
So it's less about me as an individual and more about how my choices affect the group dynamic.
Precisely. Think of the family, as our sources describe it, like this intricate, interconnected system, like a web. It's been around for generations with established roles, unspoken rules, expectations. It's all built around maintaining stability, keeping things predictable.
Like machine almost, with everyone playing their part.
Exactly. A highly calibrated machine. You might be the responsible one or the peacemaker or maybe the black sheep or the successful one. The system kind of relies on you staying in that box whether you consciously signed up for it or not.
Okay, but what happens when you decide you don't want that role anymore? What if you step off the path? If stability is the goal, change must be disruptive.
Hugely disruptive. That's when you get what we're calling the system shock wave. Any major life change. Think deciding to get divorced, ditching long-held family traditions, marrying someone from a completely different background, maybe pursuing a really unconventional career, or even adopting different political views.
Things that challenge the status quo.
Right. All of those send these tremors through the entire system. It rattles everyone.
And the family's reaction. It isn't necessarily personal disapproval of me. It's more like the system trying to pull itself back together.
That's a huge part of it. Your change makes them uncomfortable. It might force them to question their own lives, their own choices, their beliefs. So the system reacts, often defensively. It tries to push things back to the way they were.
And how does that pushback usually look? What do those shockwaves feel like in practice?
Well, the classic weapons are guilt, obligation, sometimes even outright anger or blame. Projection is really common, too.
Okay, give me an example. Let's say I'm the responsible eldest daughter, always did what was expected, went to law school, and now I announce I'm quitting law to become, a potter and move to Oregon.
Right. So your mom might not say, I'm terrified you'll be far away and I'll miss you, and I'm scared you won't be financially secure because that's my fear. Instead, she projects. She might say, that's completely irresponsible. You're throwing your life away. You're abandoning the family.
Okay, so she's using guilt and judgment to try and pull me back into the responsible lawyer daughter who stays close to home role.
Right.
Because that's the role that keeps her feeling secure.
Exactly. My leaving disrupts her emotional equilibrium, maybe the whole family's. Her fear comes out as criticism of my choice.
Wow. Okay. Just knowing that, Understanding that their reaction is often an inevitable part of the system adjusting, not necessarily a fair assessment of my life choice,
Yeah.
that actually feels powerful.
It is powerful. It's like you're decoupling their reaction from your action. You anticipate it, you see it coming, you understand, okay, they're reacting because I'm shaking the web. It lets you stay in control of your own response, whether you think their expectation is fair or totally off base.
Because you know the shockwave isn't really about you personally. It's the system doing its thing.
Right. You can see the guilt trips coming, the pointed comments, and recognize them for what they are. The system trying to regain its balance, trying to hold on.
And trying to change the whole system, trying to get everyone else to suddenly be okay with the change. That's just exhausting and probably futile.
Completely. These patterns are generations deep. The only place you have real leverage, real control is with yourself, how you choose to navigate it.
Okay, so if we want to really push this let them theory and see how it holds up under pressure, let's look at a really complex situation. Step families.
Yeah.
Our sources point to this as like the ultimate system disruption. Merging families, introducing step-parents, stepchildren. It just throws all the old rules out the window.
It really does. The stakes are incredibly high in that situation. The disruption is so profound it can either strengthen the new family structure or, honestly, break it. And this is exactly where the let them theory shifts from being just helpful to being absolutely essential, especially for the adult stepping into that pre-existing system, the step-parent.
Why does so much of the burden fall on the step-parent? Why do they need to deploy so much grace?
Well, think about it. The step-parent is the one consciously choosing to enter and therefore disrupt an established, albeit perhaps broken, family unit.
Yeah.
You're the newcomer, and you're dealing with kids who absolutely did not ask for this massive change in their lives. They're often dealing with grief, loss, loyalty conflicts, immense emotional turmoil.
Right, they didn't choose this, so the step-parent has to be the grown-up, the emotionally mature one,
Yeah.
even when they're feeling rejected or disliked or like they're walking on eggshells.
Exactly. You have to bring the wisdom and the patience, and this is where we apply specific let them actions aimed primarily at the stepkids.
Okay, what are those?
First, and maybe the most fundamental, let them grieve. Let them mourn the family they used to have or the fantasy of the family they wanted. Their loss is real, even if you're creating a loving new environment.
Acknowledge their reality. Don't try to paper over it.
Precisely. And related to that, let them see you, and maybe your own kids, if you have them, as a threat. Because objectively you are. You're competing for their parents' time, attention, affection, the most precious resource a kid has. Trying to pretend that competition doesn't exist is just naive.
And that feeling of threat, that often leads to kids trying to assert control in other ways, right? Because they feel so powerless.
Absolutely. They feel like their world's been turned upside down without their consent. So yeah, let them seek control where they can find it. Maybe it's being defiant about rules. Maybe it's withdrawing. And crucially, let them feel their emotions. Don't shut down their anger, their sadness, their resentment. Trying to force them to be happy just adds pressure.
What about the loyalty thing? Feeling like liking the step-parent is betraying their other biological parent.
That's a huge one. The loyalty bind. It's incredibly painful for kids. If I'm nice to stepmom, does that mean I don't love mom anymore? The only way through that is for the step-parent to consistently model acceptance. That includes the really big one. Let them have time alone with their parent, regularly, without making them feel guilty.
Don't make the parent choose.
Never. You're the adult. You can handle feeling left out for a bit. The kid needs that one-on-one connection reinforced. And all of this builds up to the most maybe liberating point for the step-parent. They do not have to like you. Let them. Seriously, let that expectation go.
That sounds hard, but also freeing.
It is hard, but incredibly freeing. Acceptance here isn't about demanding they like you or even respect you right away. It's about creating space. Space for things to just be for a while. When you stop fighting for their approval, when you release that need, the tension often drops. You shift your energy.
You shift to the let me part.
Exactly. Let me show up consistently. Let me be kind. Let me be patient. Let me be the stable adult, regardless of how they're acting today.
And focusing on your behavior, showing that grace, even when you feel hurt or ignored. That's what can eventually soften the dynamic, create space for something new to grow.
That's the idea. It's the long game. It takes immense patience. It really underscores that quote we found. If it weren't for families, I wouldn't have a business. These bonds are just inherently complex. Recognizing that is step one.
Okay, so let them have their feelings, their reactions, their grief. Got it. But what happens when their opinion isn't just like systemic pushback or grief? What if it feels deeply personal and hurtful? A judgment on who you fundamentally are.
Ah, yes. That requires digging deeper. That's where we need the second tool.
Right, we got the action, let them. But actually doing that feels almost impossible when you're feeling really wounded by why they disapprove.
Exactly. If it feels like a core judgment on who you love, what you believe, who you are just saying let them can feel hollow, maybe even invalidating to yourself. This is where the mindset tool comes in. We call it understanding the frame of reference. Think of it as the empathy engine that powers the let them strategy.
Okay, so it helps with the deeper stuff, the really painful disapproval.
Yes. It moves beyond just observing the reaction. Okay, mom's freaking out because I'm moving, to understanding the origin of that reaction.
Hmm.
Frame of reference, simply put, is about understanding the lens through which someone sees the world or sees your situation.
Trying to see it from their perspective.
More than just perspective, it's digging into their history, their experiences, their fears, their own unresolved stuff. Everything that shaped that lens. It's an intellectual exercise, almost like being a detective about their emotional history.
We saw Lisa Bilyeu talk about this concept, right?
Right.
And it really resonated with people.
Hugely, because it addresses that deeper need.
Yeah.
It doesn't ask you to agree with their opinion, absolutely not, especially if it's hurtful or wrong, but it asks you to understand why they hold it. What in their life, their past, their own frame makes that opinion seem logical or necessary to them.
So if you can figure out the why, the root cause, maybe their own trauma or fear,
Then their opinion suddenly loses some of its personal sting. You see it not as a reflection of your inadequacy, but as a product of their story, their self-protection, maybe.
but how do you do that? How do you detach from the hurt in the moment and get analytical? That sounds really challenging when someone you love is, tearing down your choices.
It is challenging. It takes practice. But the goal isn't to magically stop feeling hurt. It's about changing your relationship to their opinion. Remember, the core action is still rooted in let them. You're not trying to change their opinion because you realize their opinion is built on their entire life experience. Fighting it is like fighting their past. So, understanding their frame of reference gives you the why behind letting them have their opinion. It makes the let them feel less like giving up and more like strategic understanding.
It unlocks compassion, maybe, even if you strongly disagree.
That's the hope. Compassion for the person, even if not for the opinion itself. And to really get how this works, we need to walk through that case study Lisa Bilyeu shared. It makes it so clear, right? Because abstract concepts are one thing, but a real story shows the power. Let's dive into Lisa's experience with her mother and her husband, Chris.
Okay, so the setup is, well, it's classic family drama, isn't it?
Mhm.
Lisa's over the moon. She's found her soulmate, Chris. She's ecstatic.
Pure joy. But her mother, visibly, painfully unenthusiastic, just radiating disapproval.
Ouch. And that tension just simmered, didn't it? Until it finally came to a head in this really blunt, painful conversation. This was years before Lisa understood the frame of reference idea.
Yeah, she was hurt, feeling totally unsupported, so she confronted her mom, asked her to at least pretend to be happy for her.
And her mom's reply was just brutal honesty. She said, "But I didn't choose him for you, and if it were up to me, I wouldn't have, so I am not going to act like I did."
Wow. Can you imagine hearing that? It's devastating. It basically says, your happiness isn't my priority here, my own preferences.
Hmm.
And Lisa carried that hurt, that feeling of judgment and disapproval for years, believing her mother fundamentally rejected her choice of partner.
That's a heavy burden. How did the frame of reference change that, years later when she applied it?
It completely reframed the entire situation. She realized her mother's reaction wasn't actually about Chris at all. It wasn't judgment of him as a person. It was, deep down, about the mother's own fear and grief.
Okay, let's unpack that. We need the details here. What was the specific trigger in the mother's mind?
The trigger was geography. Chris was from the East Coast. Lisa was living in the Midwest near her mom. Marrying Chris meant Lisa would almost certainly move east, permanently.
So the mother wasn't seeing a marriage, she was seeing a loss, a separation.
Exactly. A prominent separation from her daughter. And that specific fear had deep, deep roots in the mother's own life story.
Okay, tell us about the mother's lens, her history.
Right. So go back. Lisa's mom, as a young woman, leaves her family farm way up in upstate New York at 17 to go to college in Kansas. A huge move. Total change of scenery.
Okay, culture shock probably too.
Good time. Then she gets married really young, 19. Gets pregnant almost immediately with Lisa. This wasn't the plan. It was sudden, maybe a bit overwhelming.
And crucially, where were they living?
Still in Kansas, miles and miles away from her family support system in New York, no grandparents nearby, no aunts, uncles, siblings, just her and her young husband figuring it out alone.
That sounds incredibly isolating for a new young mother.
Terribly isolating. And then comes this moment, this piece of generational trauma that just cements everything. When her husband's parents found out she was pregnant,
Yeah.
the grandmother apparently said to her, "I hope you didn't just ruin our son's life."
Oh my God, that's horrific. What a thing to say to a pregnant 19-year-old.
Unbelievable, right? And that line, that judgment, that fear projected onto her, "I hope you didn't ruin his life," it became the cornerstone of the mother's frame of reference about family. It taught her, on a gut level, that raising kids far away from family support is incredibly hard, lonely, maybe even shameful or life-ruining.
So decades later, when her own daughter, Lisa, is marrying someone from the East Coast.
Her mom isn't seeing Lisa, the capable adult, finding happiness. She's flashing back. She's seeing the ghost of her 19-year-old self, isolated, unsupported, struggling far from home. She's projecting her own history of loneliness and fear onto Lisa's future.
So the lack of enthusiasm, the blunt, "I wouldn't have chosen him." It wasn't about Chris. It was the mother's terror of her daughter repeating her own difficult, isolated experience. She wanted Lisa to stay close.
Precisely. It was grief masquerading as judgment, grief over the anticipated loss of proximity to her daughter.
And that desire to keep your kids close, I mean, that's pretty universal for parents, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Even Lisa admitted she probably wouldn't choose a partner for her own kids that would take them halfway across the world.
Right. It's that primal parental instinct. You want them near. You want access to them, to the grandkids. It's rooted in love and maybe a bit of, wanting things to be easy and familiar.
Okay, so when you understand that the criticism comes from this deep well of the mother's personal history, and fear the sting really does lessen. It wasn't about Lisa's choice being wrong. It was about the impact of that choice on the mother's emotional landscape.
And that understanding, digging into the frame of reference, leads to this huge aha moment. The breakthrough Lisa had was realizing, wait a minute, she wasn't wrong from her perspective. Her fear was valid based on her life.
But, she realized, I wasn't wrong either.
Exactly. We were both right, based on our own frames of reference. Lisa was right to choose the person who made her happy. Her mother was right to feel apprehensive based on her past trauma.
And when you get that, when you see that both perspectives are valid within their own context,
The fight just dissolves. The need for one person to be right and the other to be wrong disappears. You're not adversaries anymore. You can suddenly hold space for both truths simultaneously. And in that space, there's room for connection again, for empathy, instead of just conflict.
Okay, but let's be real. This sounds mature, like really emotionally evolved. Detaching from your own hurt, stepping into their shoes, that's incredibly difficult,
Right.
especially if their opinion isn't just based on old fear, but feels genuinely mean or maybe bigoted or just deeply undermining. Does frame of reference still work then? Does understanding why someone is being awful excuse it?
No, absolutely not. That's a critical point. Understanding the frame of reference is not about excusing harmful behavior. It's not about rolling over and accepting abuse or disrespect. Think of it more as a tool for managing your own emotional energy. If someone's views or behavior are consistently toxic and damaging to you, understanding their frame of reference might help you set a boundary without getting consumed by rage or bitterness.
So it helps you detach emotionally even while you're drawing a line. Like, okay, I understand why you believe that hurtful thing because of your upbringing, experiences, whatever, but it's still hurtful, and I won't tolerate it being directed at me.
Precisely. It allows you to see their behavior as a symptom of their issues, their unhealed wounds, their limited perspective, rather than making it about your worth. So even if you have to limit contact or end a relationship, you can potentially do it with a little more clarity and a little less personal venom because you see the bigger picture of their limitations.
It allows space for two things to be true. I love this person, or I understand this person's history, and their behavior opinion is unacceptable to me.
Yes. And in that complex space, love can still exist, or at least understanding can, without requiring you to endorse or accept the unacceptable parts.
And it brings us back to the long game again. If you don't get sucked into the fight, if you stay grounded in your own truth and consistently show up with integrity, sometimes things shift over time.
Often they do. Like Lisa's mom, who now, 30 years later, apparently adores Chris. People can evolve,
Yeah.
but they need the space to do it. They rarely change because you demanded it. They change when they see you living your life authentically and happily, despite their initial disapproval.
It took Lisa stepping out, living her life anyway, for her mom's frame of reference to eventually expand.
Okay, so this brings it all together. We start by facing reality. Family can be tough. The system resists change. You can't control other people's opinions or feelings. Trying is exhausting.
Right, accepting that reality isn't giving up, it's actually where you get your power back. Because once you stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable,
Well, you free up all that energy to focus on what you can control
yeah.
yourself, your choices, your actions, your future.
So part one is really solidifying that let them boundary, let them be who they are. Your dad, your mom, your siblings, your in-laws, they are who they are. Maybe they won't change. Maybe your family life isn't the fairy tale you wished for.
Yeah, and let's inject that hard truth again from the sources. Most people haven't done the deep emotional work. Therapy, self-reflection, managing their triggers. It's just not where most folks are at. And if they haven't met themselves deeply, how can they possibly meet you with the depth, understanding, and support you crave? They often just can't.
That's a tough pill to swallow, but necessary. You have to at some point say, let them be limited. Let them be less than perfect. Let them be less than what I maybe feel I deserve.
When you release them from the obligation to be your perfect support system, you stop fighting the system. You stop draining your battery trying to fix the unfixable.
And that acceptance, that dropping the rope in the tug of war, that's what unlocks the second really empowering part.
Yes, the shift to let me
figure out what I want, what kind of relationship I want to build based on my values. What kind of person do I want to be in the face of all this?
This is where it gets practical. This is about conscious choices, driven by your values, not by their expectations or your guilt.
So, concrete examples. Let me decide how much time I spend with them. Maybe it's based on genuine desire, not just obligation. Maybe 30 minutes is my limit before the negativity gets draining, and that's okay.
Let me create my own traditions for holidays or family events, even if it rocks the boat. Their disappointment is their wave to ride, not yours to manage.
Maybe it's let me be the one who models kindness, even if it's not returned. Let me be the bigger person, not out of martyrdom, but because that aligns with my values.
Or maybe let me have the difficult conversation. If the criticism is truly toxic, let me might mean clearly stating a boundary. I will not discuss my weight with you anymore. If you criticize my partner, I will leave.
And sometimes, let me might even mean letting yourself make big changes. Separating yourself if the dynamic is truly harmful. Freeing yourself from the guilt.
Or the opposite. Maybe let me choose to go all in with the time I have left. Recognize life is short. If I choose to be present with difficult family, let me do it fully, without resentment, accepting them as they are.
Okay, let's boil down the core theory one more time. The problem. We give fear of what others think way too much power. It holds us back, makes us procrastinate, aim for impossible perfection.
The truth. People will judge you. They will have opinions, negative ones sometimes, no matter what you do. So accept it. Let them. Fighting it is pointless.
The solution. When you genuinely let them think whatever they want, you get your freedom back. Freedom to act according to your values. Focus on making yourself proud. Because honestly, when you're truly proud of how you're living, their noise just fades.
Their opinion loses its power over you. Hashtag, outro.
And that brings us full circle. The whole family dynamic, the whole system, it actually starts to get healthier when just one person changes how they show up.
And not one person. It's you. You're the point of leverage.
And it requires holding on to that tough wisdom. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. Expecting more from people who haven't done their own work is setting yourself up for disappointment. So, let them be where they are. Let things be imperfect.
Because when you truly shift your focus from let them to let me, you put all your energy, all your focus, all your love onto the only opinion that ultimately shapes your life and happiness.
Yours.
Your own opinion of yourself. Your internal compass becomes your guide.
So we'll leave you with this to think about, a final thought.
Yeah.
You get this one life, this one wild, precious life, as the poet said. Think about the people who bother you, the loved ones who drive you crazy. How much time do you actually have left with them?
And then ask yourself, is the energy I'm pouring into trying to control their opinion, an opinion rooted in their history, not my worth? Is that energy better spent than the energy I could use to live my life in a way that makes me look in the mirror and feel genuinely deeply proud of the person I am?
What choice gives you more freedom? Mull that over.